darlings. I hope you're doing very well. Welcome to a new episode of Don't Hold Me Back, the first podcast created with and for people with learning disabilities. My name is Jules de Bellis. I use they, them pronouns, and I will be your host. In today's episode, we're going to talk about mental health, specifically mental health prevention and mental health services specific for people with learning disabilities. As usual, I'm not going to be alone, and I will be co-hosted by an incredible expert by experience. So please welcome Jem. Hi, Jem. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. How about you?
Yeah, all good, all good. Thank you. And thank you for joining us
Yeah,
today.
of course.
And Jem and I are not going to be alone because today we have an incredible professional that's going to talk everything about mental health. So please welcome Aaron. Hi, Aaron.
Hello. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I hear you're well too.
Yeah, all good, all good. Thank you. Jem, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So, my name is Jem, and I have a mild learning disability, and I like to do artworks. I like to play football. I just like to have fun with my friends.
Thank you very much. Aaron, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about you, your role, where you work at?
Yes, hello everyone. So I'm Aaron, and I do a lot of things really, but I suppose for the purposes of today, I work for a company called Minds Matter, Minds Matter Islington, and our sort of role is to sort of talk to people, a lot of people who are young people about their mental health and mental health prevention and just being aware. I think, especially when I was growing up, it just wasn't a conversation about mental health at all. So I think it's really important that we sort of talk to young people, especially about mental health and where they can go and to destigmatize mental health, because I think people, when people hear mental health, they think the extremes of mental health, but mental health is a thing that affects everybody, every human, everybody on this earth. So I think it's about destigmatization and yeah, just having a really open conversation and how it affects different people in a different way.
Thank you, Aaron. And Jem, what's mental health for you?
So, for mental health, as in for me as a person, for mental health, it's like whenever someone is doing whatever they were doing during the day, and then all of a sudden their mood changes and it goes down. Like their mood changes and it goes down. It basically affects the way that they interact with the world. Like whatever they were doing during the day and their mood goes down, like it affects the way that they were interacting with other people.
Mhm.
For example, for me, whenever I'm out and about with my friends or if I'm with my family, when I go out and then my mood goes down, I just self isolate and then I just don't interact with anyone. I just stay on my phone, stay quiet, and I don't. Whenever someone tries to speak to me while I'm self isolating, I don't interact with anyone. So I would know what it's like when someone's mood is down while they're doing something during the day. So that's what mental health is for me.
Speaking as a professional and yeah, someone who works in a lot of different fields, I think it's really hard to find like a definitive answer for what mental health is. As I said, it affects everybody in each all, but I suppose my answer for me would just be, or I suppose I would like to say the example of physical health, and I always use that example when I'm talking to young people because with physical health, people really know what that is. And our physical health, you go to the gym, you go for a walk, you move your body, whereas people don't necessarily think about what it means to be mentally healthy. And so for me, to be mental healthy is just to have clarity of mind. A question I always ask young people when I'm working with them is, what do you need for you to do your best work? And I think that question is it sort of, for me, it implies, what do you need for your mind to do the best work? And so yeah, I think for me, mental health is what, yeah, a clarity of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah.
And let's open up the conversation a little bit and let's talk about mental health for people with learning disabilities. How does it change to have a learning disability in regards to mental health. So is the experience of mental health different for people with learning disabilities, or is it more about the experience of accessing mental health care for people with learning disabilities that makes the real difference? If that makes sense, I don't know. I'm asking lots of questions. It's just what's coming up to my mind.
I think for me, it's not necessarily it's different for people with learning disabilities. I think it's more how people treat people with learning disabilities. I think it's more outward in versus inward out. And I think people with learning difficulties, obviously, learning disabilities, suffer with things like you said, Jem, of isolation and discrimination, and yeah, there's a lot of like communication barriers. So I think a lot of that is due to the systems and not having people around that know much about or educated about it. But like I said before, I think mental health affects everybody, and it's everybody's responsibility to make sure everybody can have access to have pursuing a good life.
Shall we say, for example, that it's not a matter of who has mental health difficulties, but the factors that make mental health for a person with learning disabilities a little bit more difficult to experience or manage, and definitely the systems, for example, within the NHS of accessing mental health care, that is a little bit different. Is it kind of correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, literally, yeah, very, very eloquently put.
Okay. Jem, do you agree with what we've just said, or would you like to add anything more?
So I definitely do agree with what both of you have said, because I've actually experienced what you've both said with, so someone like me having a mild learning disability and struggling with mental health and trying to seek mental health care. So for someone like me, I've been trying to go to go to different places for mental health, like trying to seek help for my mental health problems, and I just want to find somewhere that is willing to help. And I've been struggling for years of years upon years of trying to find help because of my mental health problems. So I 100% agree with what you both said, because I've experienced it myself.
Would you say, Jem, that the difficulties that you faced are due to the difficulties in navigating the system, or the fact that some mental health professionals are not actually trained to understand the mental health difficulties of people with learning disabilities, and therefore are not able to provide the best care that they could?
So when I have found a mental health, like as someone, a professional worker in that, I'd say in that industry or like in that bracket, it's been difficult whenever I've spoken to them about what I've been going through. And whenever I try to explain it into more detail, like they all of a sudden out of nowhere they decide to cut me off and not understand me fully.
Hmm.
And I've tried explaining it to other professionals about it, and I'm still waiting for like a professional to go to and seek for help.
Hmm.
And for someone like me having a mild learning disability, it has been difficult for over the years of me trying to seek professional help. So whoever out in this world has learning disabilities, they shouldn't be excluded. They
Hmm.
should always be included.
Yeah, I get it, Jem. And as an advocate, I have faced the obstacles that you're talking about. First of all, it's not easy to understand where to go to in general within the NHS. So sometimes you go to your GP and you talk to them about your mental health difficulties and your struggles, and not all the time they will make referrals to mental health services just because they don't really get what kind of support you need. Because at least this is my experience as a healthcare access advocate, there are way too many mental health services out there within the NHS, and it's difficult even for GPs sometimes to understand where to refer their patients to. And so I believe that this is kind of the first level of inaccessibility. And then once you reach a mental health service, not all the time the service that you have been referred to is actually the correct one for you. And so the entire process needs to start again. And other times, the service that you're actually accessing is the correct one for you, is the one that is available for you, and they will provide the right support of mental health care that you need. But sometimes the professionals that are working with you are not actually fully trained on the difficulties that people with learning disabilities might face, because of course mental health, as we were just discussing earlier, is an intersection of different factors. So of course, the ones that are more experienced by everyone. So that could be, for example, gender inequalities and race inequalities and class inequalities and the entire economy collapsing and everything that's going on in the world where you live. All those factors do make the difference when we talk about mental health, because it's lots of things adding up on top of each other. And when you also add a disability, that could be either physical disability or learning disability, that's another factor to add in the sum. And so some professionals are just not trained to understand that this one element can be as important as everything else. And so it is really difficult for a person with learning disabilities to actually get the appropriate support that they might need.
Yeah, I think something that happens a lot with professionals, which is really unfortunate. And again, I'm not coming from a place of having like so many answers, but I think a lot of the time you'll present, oh, I'm someone with a learning disability, and then you would then say, oh, but I'm struggling with mental health, for example, and then some professional will then link those two things together. And I think sometimes it's really dangerous because you have to separate those things. And I think because yes, and I can't criticize the professionals, so I know they're very busy and I know that they have a lot of work, and it's very easy for me to say as someone who's not a doctor in that position. But I think it just, that little bit of time, that 2 minutes, just to have that empathetic view of like, all right, cool, you're a person with a learning disability and you have mental health. Sometimes those things link, sometimes they're very separate. So I think it's trying to divide those things. And I think it is about just having the time and treating people as individuals. I think a lot of the time, in my experience, it's grouping people together and making people think, oh, I know what this is. I've read this. I know what this is. And they're saying this is the one size fits all type of treatment and care. So yeah, I think it's more about seeing people as individuals. But again, like I said, I don't have the answers because I know when you go to these places, a lot of the time is against you. And especially if there are communication barriers with the time, sort of the time eating away is very difficult. And that's why I know it's very helpful sometimes to have maybe an advocate with you or someone with you to support you, to help with some communication things. And before that, having preparations of, these are the things that I want to talk about. You should say, I'm not leaving until I get what I want and what I need. And I think as hard as that can be for some people, I feel like if you can't do it for yourself, maybe get somebody who can maybe be that voice for you in the room. Because I feel like if you don't come at it sometimes with that sort of harder, more direct, more assertive approach, it's really hard to get what you want.
So, generally speaking, what are the pathways for mental health for general population, not necessarily for people with learning disabilities? Like, what are the steps that a person that is struggling with that mental health needs to do in order to access mental health care?
I suppose there's a GP, but again, like you sort of said, Jules, some professionals will be very knowledgeable about where they can sort of direct you and be a bit empathetic to everybody's position, whereas some people wouldn't be. So yeah, the GP is sort of an avenue. But then beyond that, there's charities, and yeah, I haven't got a list of them all. But for example, there's charities like MenCap, and Minds, and especially for people with learning disabilities. Again, I know I've seen the positive and negatives of these charities, but I know for the positives, these charities especially, they are trained and do have trained professionals working with them. There's also the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities. I know, yeah, as a charity, if you need support or advice, those are the sort of the places that I would go to. But yeah, like I said before, everybody has a negative and positive experience of these charities, but is an avenue you can go down. If you needed a bit more, I suppose, maybe long term care, there's places like the National Care Group or Voyage Cure, places like that where if you're like, oh, this is actually more of a long term thing, it's not just more of an advice thing. And then if you're in it's sort of immediate health. If you if you feel like you're at a crisis point, there's places like Samaritans that you can go to that you can ring up. You could also, if you feel like you don't want to talk to anybody like that, there's also Shout, which is a texting service. And there's the bigger umbrella of NHS England. But again, sometimes it's going to be a great experience and sometimes it's not. But yeah, and I think for me, it's more the culmination of a lot of these things of having somebody in your life that you trust that can maybe then help you reach out to these places. And like I said before, of when you do reach out to these places, especially the caregivers or the umbrella of NHS England, to come with a more assertive sort of presence, to get what you want, and demand it. I think, yeah.
Yeah, and I would also add to ask for referrals and signposting. So sometimes even charities that are specialized in mental health do not have the resources to support people with learning disabilities. So as an advocate, I unfortunately had the experience of having referrals that I've made rejected just because the service user that I have referred them to had a learning disability, which is totally fine. That can happen. However, I think that pushing them and demanding them, okay, this is not something that you can provide, but at least can you signpost me to somebody that is more like that is a better fit for me. I think that sometimes when people face like so many doors closing in front of them, they just might feel even more like they might just feel in a even lower mood, let's put it this way, because of the rejection and everything. And sometimes we just need to self-advocate or ask somebody that is very close to us, that could be family, carers, or professional advocates, to advocate for us, saying, hey, I understand that you cannot do this, but at least can you signpost me to the right person, the right service? And I think this is very important. Like, let's not stop fighting, because we just don't stop fighting when we talk about physical health. Why should we stop fighting and asking for better healthcare when we talk about mental health? let's move on a little bit. So would you like to chat about mental health prevention, for example? So, for example, Jem, what is mental health prevention for you? Or what does it resonate when I say mental health prevention? All the little different things that you can do firsthand to improve or maintain a good mental health. For example, you said earlier that you are a football passionate. So, for example, playing football is something that might help you with your mental health, for example, to fight isolation and sometimes even social anxiety, I would say. What do you think, Jem?
So when I do play football, it does prevent me from like self isolating. Like it makes me want to engage with my friends while playing football, and sometimes it does it it doesn't prevent me from self isolating, but most times it does prevent that from happening, and I'm always more happier when it doesn't when it prevents me from being just by myself with no one around. I'm glad that me doing something that I enjoy prevents me from doing the things that makes my mental health go down even more.
When in Minds Matter, especially, we talk a lot about well-being, and there's sort of, and I don't know if this is the time to talk about it, but we talk about the 5 ways of well-being. And yeah, I'm going to read it just because I can't remember all of them on top of my head. But the first one is take notice. Is to take notice, and so that's more of a self-reflective one of how do I feel, what's going on around me, just to be a bit present. Because I think a lot of the times when a lot of our mental health is because we're thinking a bit too much. We're thinking a lot about the past or imagining a future. It's not about what's actually happening right now in this moment. Then we have to be physically active. So what you're just saying with Jem there about playing football, going for a walk, going to the gym, doing yoga. Again, like scientists have said for years, the endorphins and everything that is released when we are physically active, and that actually has an effect on our mental health as well. We have connecting with people. That could just be talking with people. Again, some of these interlinks. So football, there's connection. There's we're actively trying to pursue something together, playing a game. Yeah, and then the fourth one is to learn new skills, and that could be anything. Learning a new hobby, learning a language, just learning something. It's actually does really amazing things for our mental health. And the fifth and last one is to give to others, to actually get to share your skills if you've learned something, to even if it's smiling at a stranger or somebody, but to give to others. And I think again, this doesn't solve everything, but when you look at these 5 ways of mental well-being, it has an amazing effect on the mental health in my experience. And just even the research shows that if you can commit to these 5 things on a regular basis, I think we would all be we would all be better, and I think the world would be a better place. But again, that's to say, when things are at a crisis point, it's really hard to focus on some of these things. I just wanted to say that. But if we can afford to sort of look into that, I think that would, yeah, as I said, make everybody feel that little bit better.
Yeah, and as you said, these are just steps, which
Yeah.
means that you don't have to do everything all at once. You can just like pick one and start with that and see how it makes you feel. So it doesn't need to happen all in one go, especially if we are near or past the crisis point where we actually need like immediate support. It's all a matter of like, I like the metaphor of like watering your own plant in some way, or your own garden. Like you just don't wait for, a very dry period of the year, let's say for example summer, to water all your plants all at once, because that could be like overwhelming for them. and it's the same thing with mental health. If we take all those steps all at once, it could be overwhelming and not actually helping as much as they could, because it's just too much all at once. Whether if you water your plants, you water your garden a little bit every day, and you allow your plant to actually root well and to reach for the sun, just in a little while, with patience, you will see that your garden is actually getting better, it's getting beautiful, and just kind of things. And I believe that it's kind of the same with mental health. It's just a matter of like those daily actions that can really make the difference.
I think the time when people focus on their mental health is when things go wrong, or when things are like, oh, I'm at a point of, oh my god, I need to do something, and then I'm going to start journaling, or I'm going to actively do something to improve my mental health. I'm like, yes, 100% do those things in those moments, but I think, like you said, it is about watering the garden and doing those things, the steps that I mentioned about the 5 ways to well-being, doing it even when you feel good, or even when things don't seem to be going wrong. I think that is the foundation, and you have to build upon that foundation. So if things, God forbid, did go, yeah, you did reach a crisis point, you can sort of build, like, rely on the foundation you've already built, rather than starting from a point of scratch. I always say, and I'm a big advocate for talking therapy, and I've been going to therapy for a number of years now. I remember one of the reasons I went to it because I don't drive, but I use the analogy of I think it's every year you have to have an MOT on your car, whether your car is broken down or not. And I think that's the way I see sort of my life, of even when things are okay, or like focus on mental health, because I think it's really difficult when you're at a crisis point to even think straightly. So I think, yeah, if you all invest in our mental health from whichever place we're in right now, is the right course of action to do.
Like Aaron said, that like you want to like do something, and then eventually when you do that, whatever you wanted to do, it ends up being a hobby that you regularly do. So it's like, for example, if you wanted to, like, as a joke, you wanted to go to an art class, for example, and you go to it, and then you see loads of people, and then like you introduce yourself to everyone, but then eventually you keep going to each session, so it turns into a new hobby, and then that helps you focus on that instead of whatever you're going through mentally. So like when you're focusing on one thing, you're forgetting about whatever's going on mentally. So like, for example, me going football, I'm so focused on football that I'm not focused on anything to do with like my mental health. That's how focused I am.
Yeah, let's say that all those things are like healthy distractions that kind of give you a little bit of a release, at least for the like hour and a half that you actually do the activity. So it actually gives you a little bit more energy sometimes to actually then go home and deal with your mental health and deal with your problems, but with a different kind of with a different energy, with a different perspective, because all the chemicals in your brain are actually working in your favor. You're not spiraling anymore. So thank you very much. And one thing that at Elfrida we are really proud of is that we do understand that isolation for people with learning disabilities can be a very big factor that can make mental health a little bit more difficult. So something that we do on weekly basis is actually providing those like social activities that people with learning disabilities can access to combat isolation and improve their mental health, making new friends, and also sharing experiences with other people. So, for example, we do football sessions, and tennis sessions, and I believe that we've just launched some basketball and tennis or something like that. I don't remember, but on our website there's definitely plenty of information of all our sports sessions that we do at Elfrida, and we actually just launched some weekly art sessions as well. And so if you want to learn more about the activities that we do, you can visit our website www.elfrida.com, and you can follow us on Instagram at the Elfrida Society. And of course, you can reach out to us to get to know all the different things that we do and all the different kinds of support that we can provide. I also do reckon and appreciate that people with learning disabilities in Islington are very lucky to have organizations, not just as the Elfrida Society. There's plenty of different organizations that support people with learning disabilities, and that's not the case everywhere in the UK. So if you do need help and support, reaching out to your local services, or if you need help with your mental health and you really don't know who to reach out to, you can always get to us, and we will do the best that we can to signpost you to the right service for you. And I believe it's going to be the same for you, Aaron, and for Mind Matters.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. So thank you both very, very much for being such an amazing guest and co-host, Aaron and Jem. And this was another episode of Don't Hold Me Back, the first podcast created with and for people with learning disabilities. And I'll see you in the next episode next month. Bye.